Does £750,000 sound like enough money to retire? In this video, I'm going to show you why the same £750,000 could tell three completely different retirement stories. In one version, the plan may look comfortable. In another, one big decision at the start of retirement could put far more pressure on the future. And in the third, spending more in the early years could actually make sense if it's planned properly. It's the same age, the same starting wealth, the same retirement date, but potentially very different outcomes. And that's why asking, is 750,000 enough to retire? It's not really the right question. The better question is, what kind of retirement does that 750,000 need to fund? Because one person might retire with 750,000 and feel completely secure. Someone else might retire with the same amount and spend the next 30 years worrying. Not because the number's different, but because the plan is different. By the end, you should see why retirement planning is not just about how much money you have, it's about how you use it. This is an illustration only. It's not personal advice, and your own circumstances will be completely different. But it should help you think more clearly about what really matters before you decide whether you can afford to retire. Okay, so let's imagine a couple. We'll call them Mr. and Mrs. Mock. They are both age 60. They own their own home, the mortgage is paid off, and they want to stop working now. And between them, they have £750,000 in liquid capital. But rather than just saying they have 750,000, let's break it down properly. So in this example, Mr. Mock has a pension worth 300,000 and Mrs. Mock has exactly the same value of pension worth 300,000 as well. And they've got £100,000 in investments, which is in a general investment account. They've also got £50,000 in cash, which they want to keep as their emergency fund. So they're just keeping that as cash at the moment. For illustration, we'll assume that the cash earns 1%, investments and pensions 5%, and inflation is priced in at 2%. These are all assumptions, and in reality will be far more or less than this depending upon the circumstances at any given time. So that gives us £600,000 in pensions, £100,000 in investments, and £50,000 in cash. So the total, £750,000. And their question is simple: can we retire now? And this is where many people make the first mistake. They look at the number and they try to answer immediately. Is £750,000 enough? Yes, probably enough, or no, you need more. But both answers can be wrong because the real answer depends on how they want to live. Scenario 1. They retire at 60 and spend £60,000 per year, every year, all the way to 100. Both of them receive full state pensions from age 67, and this is the steady spending version. Scenario 2, they still want to spend £60,000 per year, but on day one of retirement, they use 25% of their total pensions and investments. So that's £187,500 that they spend on day one. Maybe they use their tax-free cash. Maybe they gift money to family. Maybe they help children with a house deposit. Maybe they do home improvements. But the key point is this: that money leaves the plan immediately. Scenario 3. They front load their retirement. What I mean by this is, instead of spending £60,000 per year, they decide they want to spend £75,000 per year up until age 70. So that means that in their earlier years, they're having more holidays, more travel, more experiences, more enjoyment while they are younger and more active. Then, after age 70, they decide to reduce their spending as life naturally begins to slow down a bit. So that's three scenarios, the same couple, the same £750,000 and the same retirement age. but very different retirement plans. And this is where cash flow planning becomes useful, because it becomes about you and what you want to build for you and your family. A cash flow plan is not a crystal ball. It doesn't predict the future perfectly, and it shouldn't be treated as though it does. But it does help you test decisions before you make them. It helps you ask, what happens if we spend this much? What happens if we gift money early? What happens if we spend more whilst we're younger? And what happens if markets are poor? That's far more useful than simply guessing, because guessing in retirement can be dangerous. You might spend too much too early, or you might do the opposite. You might have enough money but spend years being too scared to enjoy it. And this is one of the biggest issues I see on a regular basis. People don't just want a technically perfect plan. They want confidence. Confidence to retire, to spend, and to help family where they can. Scenario 1, 60,000 a year to age 100. So let's start with scenario 1. Mr. and Mrs. Mock retire at 60. They spend £60,000 per year, and we model that all the way to age 100. Both full state pensions begin at age 67, and this can be seen in the yellow bar. That state pension timing matters because there is a 7-year gap between ages 60 and 67. During those first 7 years, their income needs to come mainly from their pensions, investments, and possibly cash, all of which are blue and brown bars. Then, once both state pensions begin, they may not need to take as much from their own assets. So, on the cash flow model, we are looking at the shape of the plan. Does the money last? Does it become tight later? Does the plan rely too heavily on investment returns? And is there enough flexibility? If this scenario works comfortably, that gives us a useful baseline. This cash flow shows that at age 79, they have run out of capital and will have their state pensions left to use, as well as the value of their home. It suggests that £60,000 per year may be realistic, but if they want monies to be left behind or a higher income for longer than age 79, then it doesn't work. But this is only the starting point, because most retirements do not follow one perfectly smooth line. Scenario 2, spending or gifting on day 1. Now, let's make one big change. They still retire at 60, and they still want £60,000 per year, and they still have full state pensions starting at 67. But at the start of retirement, they use or gift 25% of their total pensions and investments, but leave the £50,000 in cash untouched. So that is in effect £187,500. Now, this is where a lot of people can get caught out, because taking tax-free cash can feel like a bonus, and gifting money can feel like the right thing to do. And sometimes it absolutely is. But once that money's gone, it's no longer available to fund future income. So the question's not, can I take tax-free cash? The better question is, what happens to the longer term plan if I take it? And this is where the cash flow helps show it. If Mr. and Mrs. Mock remove that tax-free cash on day 1, they've got much less money supporting the same lifestyle that they want. In this scenario, it reduces their £60,000 spending ability to age 71, at which point you can see red bars, which show a shortfall to meet their required income. And as such, they will need to use their state pensions and consider releasing equity. The early gifting and spending of tax-free cash has reduced their income capacity by approximately 8 years. The plan may still work for them, and they might be happy living on significantly less at age 71, but it is more fragile. There's less room for poor markets, there's less room for inflation, and possibly less comfort later in life. This doesn't mean the gift is wrong, it means the decision needs context, because a decision that feels affordable today may have consequences 15, 20 or 30 years later. Scenario 3, spending more while they're younger. So now let's look at the third scenario. This one is interesting because it is often closer to real life. Many people do not want to spend exactly the same amount every year forever. They want to spend more in the early years of retirement, and that makes sense. At 60, they may feel healthy. They may want to travel, they may want longer holidays, they may want to do the things they've never had time to do whilst working. So, in this scenario, Mr. and Mrs. spend £75,000 per year until age 70. Then, after age 70, they reduce their spending. This reduction in spending means they don't exhaust their capital and they still have some breathing room. You can see the spending is heavier in the earlier years, but that's because they're in good health and they want to travel and spend money, which is more typical. Having confidence to do this means you can control your spending with confidence and look at turning it down as you become less inclined to travel and spend more. This is where retirement planning becomes much more human, because a straight line plan might assume spending rises every year with inflation forever. But people do not always live like that. Some spend more early, some spend less later, some have big one-off costs, some help family, some change their minds. So the question here is, can they afford to enjoy the first decade more? If the cash flow says yes, that could be really powerful because it gives them permission to enjoy the years when they're most able to. Now, we've seen 3 versions of retirement. In the first version, they spend £60,000 per year to age 100. In the second, they spend or gift 25% of their investments and savings on day one, but they still want £60,000 per year. And in the third, they spend £75,000 per year until age 70 and then reduce that spending. It's the same couple, the same £750,000, the same retirement age, but completely different planning questions. And that is the point. The question is not, is £750,000 enough? The question is, enough for what? Enough to spend £60,000 a year? Enough to gift money early? Enough to give you confidence? Because each version of retirement could lead to a different answer, and you need to prioritise what is best for you. But often you only know this answer when you begin to start planning and looking at these scenarios and seeing outcomes. It's at this point that we see people attach values to those outcomes and then they begin to make a plan for themselves. There is another really important point here. You don't build a cash flow plan once and then ignore it for 30 years. That would be like setting your sat nav at the start of a long journey and then refusing to look at it again, even when the roads change or traffic builds. Retirement needs regular reviews because life changes, markets change, spending changes, tax rules change, inflation, health, family circumstances, and sometimes the plan changes in a really good way. Maybe markets do better than expected, maybe you spend less than expected, and maybe the plan shows you can afford to enjoy more than you originally thought. Or maybe it shows you need to be a bit more careful for a while. That's not failure, that's the point of planning. And a good retirement plan should help you adapt as things change. So can Mr. and Mrs. Mock retire at age 60 with £750,000? Potentially yes, but not because £750,000 is automatically enough. It depends on the version of retirement they choose. That is why the number alone is not the answer, the plan is the answer. Because £750,000 is not just a pot of money. It's income, it's holidays, it's helping family, it's tax decisions, it's investment risk, it's security, it's flexibility, and hopefully it's peace of mind. So if you're approaching retirement and wondering whether you have enough, don't just ask, how big is my pot? Ask, how much do I want to spend? Will that spending change over time? When do state pensions start? Where will income bridge that gap before I get there? Should I take tax-free cash? What happens if markets fall? What happens if I live longer than expected? And will this plan give me the confidence to actually enjoy retirement? Because retirement planning is not about predicting the future perfectly. It's about creating clarity, and clarity creates confidence. And sometimes that confidence tells you, yes, you can retire. And sometimes it tells you, you can retire, but you need to be careful. And sometimes it's not yet. But all of these answers are better than guessing, because if you've spent 30 or 40 years building this money, it makes sense to have a plan for how you're going to use it. So if you are approaching retirement and grinding it out to get to a magical number such as 750,000 or a specific age of 65, then think to yourself, do I need to wait? How valuable is this next year to me? If you enjoy this type of retirement planning content, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments, would you rather have a steady spending throughout retirement or spend more in the early years while you're younger and more active?